Dear students of the first year of general medicine, it's nice to have the chance to show you the contents of the lecture, nervous system. As you see in the syllabus, is the right time to start with the last part of the anatomy in the first year, which is the neuroanatomy. The neuroanatomy consists of two parts: the peripheral nervous system, which will be a topic for today, and also the central nervous system, which will take much more time. Uh, the lecture is always the base of the study. Know that you will receive many different materials for studies, but take care. There are so many books, so many atlases. Do use the only one or two, because this is the most effective way of your studies. You have the color atlas of human and anatomy, like a pocket anatomy, nervous system and sensory organs from Werner Kahl and Michael Frotscher. So this is one of the best books. You can use also atlas from Netter. You can use also the atlas from Sobota. But we can start now with the nervous system in some technical aspects and limitations. As you see on the first page, the nervous system consists of nervous tissues, and the typical for them is the fact that the nervous system receives the stimuli from the body. We see two two arrows in blue, the specialized nerve endings, which are called receptors. The impulses go via the nerves belonging to the peripheral nervous system to the central nervous system, which is a spinal cord or brain. So this is the first part in the upper half of the first page. Concerning the organization of the nervous system, you can see, and I'm sure that you remember that we divide the nervous system into two parts. A, as you see, is the PNS as the peripheral nervous system, and on the right half, we see the B, this is the central nervous system. Peripheral nervous system on the left side is divided into two parts, the somatic nervous system and visceral nervous system. That means that we register the information or the impulses from the peripheral tissues. We see the blue arrow as the afferent ascending tract pathways neurons, and also in the red color the efferent or motor. Both go from or to periphery, as you see. And the periphery in the small letters colored by yellow are the spinal nerves. Then below that there are the cranial nerves, and finally autonomic. So I'm sure that we have heard about all of these three. On the right side of the same column, we see the visceral nervous system. Again, this visceral nervous system must have the same colors. That means arrow ascending, bluish, the information from the viscera, from the organs, like from the stomach, from liver, from gallbladder, etc., and the autonomic motor systems in red, which go to the organs. The right column, CNS, consists, as we remember, from number one, spinal cord, center of the reflex activity of the body, and number two is the brain, or also encephalon, which consists of the telencephalon, diencephalon, mesencephalon, pons varoli, medulla oblongata, and cerebellum. So this is the list of the structure. So we can go to the next page. Important for us would be to understand the components of the nervous system. We see two columns again. On the left side, starting with the neurons, we know that these are the principal cells which are highly specialized, and we remember from the high school that they consist of the perikaryon, this yellowish body, and then short dendrites, short processes, and also one which is called axon. And also on this side, we see also the arrow showing the way or the direction of the spread of impulses. The axon is covered by the myelin sheath. which is written on the right side of the same drawing. And the myelin sheath is formed by the Schwann cells, but only in the peripheral nervous system. The specific situation in the central nervous system is explained on the right side. So first of all, we see again that there is a neuron which consists of the body, then dendrites and axon. And axon, as you see, divides, it's written here, telodendron, into the motor and plate, which ends in the skeletal muscle, typical skeletal muscle. In the same column, we see also the chain of the neurons. It's written N1, N2, and 3. And the neurons are interconnected via the synapses, and they consist of more than 2 neurons, even 4 or 5, and we call them the neural pathways or neural tracts. Then we try to pay full attention to the category B, which are called neuroglia, which are specialized cells associated with many functions supporting, protecting the neurons. They, as is written, they protect neurons, they nourish neurons, they support the neurons in their full activities. And we divide them into some typical examples. Number one are the microglia. You see they are small cells with many processes, and they are important for the protection with high phagocytic activity. The number two are the astrocytes. Astrocytes, which two colored by yellow. Astrocytes are connected with the nourishment. You see that they are the cells interconnecting or bridging the space between the capillaries and the neurons. And finally, number three are the oligodendrocytes, oligodendroglia, and they are responsible for the formation of the myelin sheath. It's written on the bottom of the page. M means myelinated sheath or myelin sheath in the central nervous system. So we can distinguish between the peripheral nervous system. The myelin sheath is formed by the Schwann cells, as we said before, and also in the central nervous system, the myelin sheath is fully in the hands of the oligodendroglia. Concerning the following, concerning the next topic, which are receptors. So we are looking at the receptors, which are again specialized nerve endings. Very quickly, this will be explained also in the histology. So the receptors are divided again into two categories. A means the free nerve endings, which are found, for instance, in the skin, in mucosa, and transport the impulses concerning the pain or the stimuli connected with the pain. And the second category, B, are called encapsulated receptors. That means the endings are covered by the specialized capsules, and they register the touch, pressure, heat, cold, and vibration. So we divide them, as we will see in the following page, according to some aspects of classification. So the next page, please. And these are classification of neurons according to their position, location, function, etc. So again, we divide them into some categories, but mainly according to their position, location, number one in Roman numerals, and number two is the function. Concerning the location, there are two types. We call them exteroreceptors, which are situated on the body surfaces. They register pressure, touch, temperature, etc. And they are stimulated by direct contacts. So they register, for instance, the pressure in our palm or in our face. or in mucosa. They are also called teloreceptors, which are typical examples of the organs, specialized organs of hearing and vision. We will explain them together with the explanation of the pathways as a visual pathway or pathway of hearing. Then we go back to the category B. We call them interoreceptors. That means that they're situated inside. They are located within the wall of the internal organs. They register mainly and in principle pressure and tension. And the category C are called the proprioreceptors. These are situated in the locomotor apparatus, locomotor system. That means they are situated in the tendons, in the muscular fibers, in the joints capsules, and also in the periosteum on the bones. The second category, classification according to the function. We describe the mechanoreceptors, number one, which are situated within the muscle skin, with the wall of the vessels controlling the blood pressure, for instance, or tensometers of the periodontal ligaments, which is important for dentistry. We know that they, in chewing, the micro movements of the roots are controlled by the tensometers of periodontal ligaments in alveolus, in alveoli. Second category are the thermoreceptors, registering the temperature, typical for skin mucosa, or in the oral cavity is well known the elevation of mucosa called papilla incisiva, incisal papilla. And finally, category 3 are the chemoreceptors. Chemoreceptors are situated at the specific places of the vessels. This is a good example when we see the bifurcation of the external carotid artery at the level of the third or fourth cervical vertebra. And we see exter, that means EXT, external carotid artery, and then internal carotid on the other side. In their bifurcation lies the body, which is called carotid body, controlling pH of the blood. And within the wall of the enlarged portion of the beginning of the internal carotid artery is the carotid sinus, and the carotid sinus contains the baroreceptors controlling the blood pressure. And then from these bodies we see is not the best written, Roman numerals 9 and 10, which means the cranial nerves number 10 and 9, which transmit the impulses from these specialized receptors. Very good. So the next page contains the synapses. First of all, you can imagine that synapses are interconnected between the neurons. There are two principal types of the synapses. A means axodendritic. That means the bluish neuron is connected to that one which is colored by yellow or yellowish color orange. And it ends at the level of dendrite, so it's typical axodendritic interconnection. And B means axosomatic. Then you can simply identify from the name that the axons end at the level of the wall of the pericardium. Pericardium is the body of the following neuron, which is colored in yellow now. Concerning the typical principal types of neurons is not difficult, because we remember it from the beginning when we started the introduction into the tissue. So that we mentioned that there are some types. Just short review. The first one is the typical unipolar, the very frequent, or the bipolar. That means that the body lies at the center, or the body with many processes is called multipolar, or pseudo-unipolar, very, very typical, frequently found neuron. And very special is the neuron which lies in the cerebellum, which is represented by Purkinje cells. That means a very specific row of the processes. The next one is the reflex arch. Reflex arch is the principal action of the neural system. We will spend some time with two types of the reflex arc or arch. This is somatic, category A, and autonomic, category B. The first one, as we are looking now at the diagram showing in the simplified version, the first type, the somatic reflex arc, somatic reflex arch. First of all, we start now not from the traditional left side, but we start with the right side, where we see the half of the spinal cord, labeled by number 3. So we see the gray matter, which contains the nuclei. Then we see it's written on the right side, the central canal, and also the white matter. White matter contains the tracts. And then starting on the left side, please. So then we are on the periphery with numbers 1 and just one number 1 on both sides. So follow, please, the blue line. So from receptor, run. Uh, we can also describe, no, better would be the previous one. Yeah, this one. Okay, great, this is better. We start now from number 1, from the receptor in periphery. We are following the blue line in the dorsal branch. We follow the arrows. The blue line goes through the intervertebral foramen, is the black curved line. Then the continuation of the blue line goes via the ascending neuron to the spinal ganglion. You see that typical pseudo-unipolar neuron with the eccentric position of the body, and this neuron ends in the posterior root, posterior horn of the spinal cord. Then follows the black line, black neuron, which is called interneuron, is labeled. And interneurons usually interconnect the bluish lines, that means ascending afferent neurons, with the red ones, which are the motor neurons. And they have number 4. And then we follow now the red neuron, which originates from the ventral horn, ventral part of the gray matter. So we follow the arrow. It goes again through the intervertebral foramen and goes to the dorsal or ventral branches. So this must be symmetry. So again, summarizing the facts, they are the components. We can start with number 1 from the receptors, then follow the blue lines, that means the afferent ascending neurons. Then we end at the level of 3, that means the central nervous system, in this case the spinal cord, because we are at the level of reflexes. And finally, then we go via the neuron number 4, this is the red one, and we end at the level of number 5, which is the motor end plate. That means the effector. So we know that the effector in the somatic reflex arch is the somatic system. That means that that is striated muscle. This was the explanation of the function of the somatic reflex arch. Then this was number A. Then we go now to B, autonomic reflex arch. This must be on the full page. Yes, autonomic reflex arch. Yes, very good. And this autonomic reflex arch is more complicated. In the principle, must be the same. So again, starting from the right side, we are looking at blue capital letter R, that means receptor. Above that is written dorsal branch. So we follow again the blue line. These are the ascending neurons which transmit the impulses from the receptors in periphery. We go again through the black curved line indicating the intervertebral foramen, following it up to the ganglion and via the dorsal root to the posterior horn as written, where and many bluish neurons. From them runs again the interneuron in black, and it ends after short course in the anterior horn, when we started with the typical red point, which indicates the alpha motor neuron. And then we follow alpha motor neuron, which leaves the anterior horn, anterior root. We go again through the intervertebral foramen, and then we follow the red lines which is the same as the somatic reflex arch ending at the level of the skeletal muscle, is written in the upper part or in the lower part, M, or skeletal muscle. So this was just a revision of the typical somatic reflex arch. But pay please full attention to the green point, which is labeled as the lateral horn on the left side of our drawing, and it's written also below that autonomic. So a lateral horn of the spinal cord is the place where end and originate the autonomic fibers. The autonomic fibers are explained and colored by green color. So we start from the lateral horn, because lateral horn received the information from the viscera, from the internal organs in the abdominal cavity or thoracic cavity and so on. So we follow the green line. This passes through the intervertebral foramen, and carefully we go through the solid line up to the ganglia of the sympathetic trunk. So this lies in the lower part of our diagram, and there are two ganglia interconnected by the interconnection. The ganglion contains the green point, which is the next neuron. So again, from the lateral horn, we go through the solid green line to this ganglion of the sympathetic trunk, and there are more options. The options are indicated by interrupted green line. The first one goes down caudally. You see the interrupted line goes to the viscera, to the organs in the cavities, etc. The other option is to go back. You see that it follows the same way as the blue lines from the viscera, interrupted line. It goes through the short connection, which is labeled by W, because this is the white communicating branch, is written below this connection, and it goes to the spinal meningeal branch on the left side below the spinal cord. You see the symbols. There is a small capillary or small part of the vessel. That means it innervates the vessels. The arteries controlling the blood supply of the meninges, the coverings of the spinal cord, and as R again must be from receptor, but the green one ends at the level of the meningeal arteries. Or when we go back to the green point in the ganglion of sympathetic trunk, another fibers, the interrupted, go via the letter G. That means the gray communicating branch, and this ends in the dorsal branch, on the ventral branch, but it goes again to the wall of the vessels, or to the glands, or to the organs. So this diagram doesn't have any letters, but I mean that this is based on the previous same type of the fibers, is logical and relatively clear. The fact is that number one, we receive the impulses from the organs, from the wall of the organs, from the glands, from the viscera, also from the other parts of the body. But we register them via the blue lines. They end in the posterior horn of the spinal cord. Some of them go to the lateral horns, and from the lateral horns run the fibers, the green ones, to the following interconnections, which is, as we said, ganglia. If we move a little bit up, we can go a little bit to the button, yeah, to the button of the drawing. Yes, on the button is written one more, yeah. We see the viscera, and below viscera we see the glands, smooth muscles. Correct. So look, please, that viscera receive the interrupted green lines. That means the postsynaptic, postganglionic fibers, and there is in the same frame is R, the blue one. So that means there are receptors from viscera. So in principle, the somatic reflex arch receives the impulses from the walls of the body, from the surfaces, etc. But this autonomic receives also information from the viscera, from the internal organs, from the glands, from the organs, from the wall of the arteries. That's why the blue line must follow in the same way, in the same manner, the interrupted green line. You see above that, you see also the small tight fibers. In blue, we see the sensory. In the red, we see the motor. And finally, in two green lines, we can identify the preganglionic, that is the solid, thin green line, and postganglionic means the interrupted. So this is the, or this was the autonomic reflex arch. The following page, the next page, shows the, next page summarizes and shows the, in fact, the short review of the facts. Again, repeating, there are 5 components. Number 1 must be receptor. Number 2 must be ascending afferent neuron, sensory from different parts. Number 3 must be spinal cord as a part of the central nervous system. Number 4 must be efferent descending motor neuron. And number 5 is effector muscle. Muscle means in the somatic reflex arch, skeletal muscle, but in the autonomic reflex arch is the smooth muscle. That means the muscle forming the wall, for instance, the stomach, or the muscular fibers found in the glands, or very important is the muscular layer in the media of the wall of the arteries, because the autonomic nerves control also the size of the arteries, and via this control of the size of the arteries, they control the flow of the blood to the organs. We see also very simple diagram showing the segments of the spinal cord. This is just the definition. We could say that segment is that part of the spinal cord which has one pair of the spinal nerves. So this is well explained in our diagram. Again, repeating quickly, blue line indicates the ascending neuron, black neuron inside the spinal cord is the interneuron, and then following red one is the motor. All these neurons must run together and form the spinal nerve, because they are 2 sides. This is bilateral composition. So one segment of the spinal cord contains one pair of the spinal nerves. The blue and red lines indicate roots, because they are ascending and descending, or motor, and the green arrows, the vertically oriented green arrows below the word roots, indicate the intersegmental neurons, which are responsible for the interconnection between the segments. We can imagine that the reaction via the reflex arch is not only in the hands of one segment. This is usually based on the cooperation of more segments above or below the critical segments. And as we said at the beginning, the chain of the neurons form the tracts, as we see on the left side of the diagram. The blue lines indicate the ascending sensory neurons, and the motor run in the opposite direction. This diagram shows the simplified version of the diagrams, because we, in the books or the scheme showing the pathways, we don't use the diagram showing all the dendrites or all the processes of the neuron. Just that simplified version is sufficient. So this is all to this first part of the explanation. Thank you.